Do you think that you've been raised in a home where there was toxic parenting? Well, if so, stay tuned because that is what we're talking about in this video. My name is Crystal Turner. I'm a psychiatric nurse practitioner who's going holistic because I know to be whole is to be healed. And on this channel, I am talking about trauma and complex trauma and how this impacts us in our adult lives and how to navigate those experiences so that we can live a life that's more fulfilled and whole. And so, toxic parenting is one of those things that many people have experienced and we've just kind of dealt with, but not necessarily overcome. So, before we go any further, I would want you to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and share this video with someone. And so, four toxic parenting behaviors that we should know about, how they impact us as adults, and how do we navigate afterwards. So the first parenting style that is toxic is the parent who exhibits violent behavior. Violence in a household for a child can be extremely distressing, and this violence can come in a number of ways. It can be violence toward the child from a parent. It could be parents who are arguing and yelling all of the time. And it can also be a parent who is physically abusive toward another parent. Or even emotionally, verbally abusive toward another parent. Let's just say a father who's physically abusing a child's mother. These can really impact a child immensely. Many people who deal with this really grow up feeling higher levels of anxiety, and also a lack of safety in their adult life. It can cause a person to be pretty guarded in their relationships, and it can cause a person to feel that they need to control their environment. When a child is dealing with violence in the home, usually violence is very unpredictable. You don't know when it's going to happen. And when it begins to happen more frequently, you can be on edge, afraid of when it will happen again. And that causes for really a feeling of no control as a child. You're really just vulnerable to the dynamics going on in the household. So as in adult lives, many people do a lot to control their environment. And the reason for doing that is the idea of not having control can mean some form of danger, some form of chaos that might come from that. And so there can be a lot of really navigating all of a person's surroundings. And it can impact relationships when that is the thing, especially if you have a partner who hasn't come from a home with violence. It could really cause some tension. I mean, it can also cause people to grow up and really have a difficult time with conflict. If you've been a child and you've been raised in a home where conflict turns into explosive situations where someone's calling the police in the middle of the night, that can really give a person a certain view of what disagreement or conflict looks like. Now, there are many people who, when they hear the word conflict, it just means there's a disagreement and they know how to talk through it and solve things, make a solution. And, that's the extent of it. But for people who've dealt with violence, conflict means just that violence and the potential for danger and the potential for harm. And when that is the situation, some people may approach conflict in a different way. They could avoid conflict with the fear that there's going to be those types of outcomes. Or they may go into conflict guarded and really come off with a lot of anger and exhibit some of the similar behaviors that they've experienced in their own childhood. So really learning to have an awareness of this so that this can really start to be addressed is important. One thing that I've really appreciated are affirmations in this state. It just, even initially, when you're in a situation and you might feel the possibility of something happening, to really be able to affirm to yourself that you are safe, and that you are protected, and to really sit in that and try to let that be what you put in your mind and in your spirit before you go into situations. Now, this is when we're talking about when there's not a true danger at hand. Many people who've dealt with these types of traumas feel like there's always the potential for danger. But I mean, if there's not actually something happening that is dangerous, to be able to notice the difference of when danger is really right there looking at you, or if we're thinking about the potential for danger. and understanding, situations where you might see that there is really some true threat, but not a threat of the what ifs if there's a disagreement, for example. So that's number one. Number two would be the highly critical parent. A toxic parenting style is the parent that is highly critical. It's the parent who it's never enough no matter what a child does. It is, judging the child a lot, criticizing them on everything that they're doing, having an opinion that's not favorable to the child. And for many children, when they have a parent who is highly critical, they may start out trying to impress the parent or appease the parent through their performance, through the things that they do. They may be in school and be a very highly achieving student. They may get good grades, get in all of the activities, do all of the things for the real goal of getting some form of acknowledgement from a parent. And this can, in many situations, not happen. Or maybe if it does happen, it's only when they are truly like stretching themselves, but it's never when they're just being and at rest. It's always something more that could be done. And many people who grow up in this dynamic and they don't address this, and this isn't something that is processed, can grow up and in adulthood could be very much that same way, can be very high achievers, can be going for all of the accolades through their career, through their work. Definitely may have a mission, but may only see the success based on their performance of doing. And this can be exhausting for people who are dealing with this type of experience, because it's always feeling only worthy and valuable when you're achieving something. And if you have situations where you make a mistake, that could be really devastating to a person's spirit. Or even if you want to rest, that could be difficult for people who've experienced this type of childhood, because to rest and to just be, a lot of thoughts about not being enough and all of these types of false truths will come up for many people. And so again, that can just lead to a very exhausting type of adult experience. And so being able to give yourself credit when you've done something, and give yourself credit for resting, because that's important too. Everyone needs rest. And being able to give yourself acknowledgement when you've done numerous things, and also give yourself acknowledgement just for who it is that you are. And sometimes this may take time to really know who it is that you are, because many people are only functioning from the definitions that they have gathered of who they are based off of toxic parenting. So the next type of parenting style that I would want to talk about is the parent who compares their children or compares their children to other people. And this can really cause a lot of issues with self-esteem. Parents who take time to compare their children to other people can really cause children to end up having levels of low self-esteem, but also envy toward whoever it is they're being compared to, jealousy toward these people, anger toward these people, a lot of resentment. And the other way that parents do this toxic pattern of behaving and parenting would be to compare siblings to one another. Very toxic. When we talk about the family structure and having siblings can potentially be lifelong friends. They can be people that you go to first for support. They can also be, who you go through this lifespan with your children, if you all have children, and then your children are close, and people, come up together and really support each other in the ways that support may be needed throughout life. But when there's this dynamic of parents who are comparing children to one another, it's almost like they're pitting them against each other. And that's definitely going to lead to resentment, jealousy, envy, very toxic types of behavior that can now flow throughout the entire family, and leave people feeling unsupported and really unsafe in the family structure. It can bring up a lot of stress, and it can really be unfortunate that a person not be able to have like really healthy relationships with their siblings, because this type of parenting structure has been laid in the foundation early on in life. So one thing that I've always valued in the statement is when it comes to comparison. Comparison is good when you're comparing yourself to another version of yourself, because that's who you really have the power to work on. And when you do that, you don't tend to have jealousy toward the person you were last year, or, jealousy if the person you were last year was more effective than the person you are today. It will promote you to do the work to be more like that person you were a year ago. Or if you were a person a year ago, you weren't doing as well as you are today, it'd be a way to really celebrate yourself for the growth that you've made. But once we step outside of comparing ourselves to ourselves and try to compare ourselves to others, it becomes a disaster, because then we are really causing self-esteem issues for ourselves, and we could possibly ruin certain relationships when the other person is just doing them. There's no need to compare. We end up wanting to be competitive with people. And competition has its place in ways because it can motivate things and bring things forth, but not when we're competing because it's coming from some sense of insecurity and needing to do that. That can be unhealthy and cause toxicity in relationships. And as adults, we bring that behavior into our relationships. We end up impacting the quality of our relationships. And we don't really feel good about ourselves. When we're comparing ourselves to other people, it's because there's something within ourselves that we really just don't feel good about. And these other people end up being a threat. And so comparison is truly the thief of all joy. So that is a parenting style and toxic parenting behavior that I've seen the impact of it. And then the last toxic parenting behavior or parenting style that I want to talk about is the parent that is emotionally unavailable. Now, there are a number of different types of toxic parenting styles that I will talk about in the future. I've talked about 4 today. So when I talk about a parent who's emotionally unavailable, I am very aware that there are parents who are physically unavailable, but I'm talking about the emotionally unavailable parent now, the parent who is there in the home, but they are not, they have checked out emotionally. And children, when we talk about trauma, what is being impacted is a child's sense of safety and security. And that's not just physically and sexually, that's also emotionally. When a parent doesn't tell the child that they love them, does not help them to see that they see them, that they acknowledge their emotions, and is there to help support them through those emotions, that can really be impactful to a child, because they're not being given this place and this outlet to know that they're safe and to be supported. If there's dangers that come around, to know that this parent is there to help keep them safe, can make them feel vulnerable to all of the dangers that can occur in the world to them. And this can really leave a person feeling insecure. And growing into adulthood, a child is really longing for that emotional connection to their parent. And then when they don't receive it, oftentimes you continue to search for it. And through adult life, you continue to search through it through other relationships, romantic relationships and friendships. And we may find people who will be there in support, but it can also leave a person vulnerable to the mistreatment of someone else, someone who could pick up on these insecurities. And some people take advantage of that. So the idea of being able to now understand does emotional safety look like for you? How can you incorporate emotional safety, just you by yourself, into your life? Learning about what safety means for you and what that looks like, and what emotional affection also looks like to you, and being able to give that to yourself, so that we don't only seek for it from outside of ourselves. And so those are the 4 parenting styles that bring about toxicity. And when we really think about this, the impact that these experiences can have, there are so many ways that we can really think about how to move forward. First is to really have inventory on, do you see some awareness of having had this experience? Awareness is so important, because to be aware, then we know that there's an experience that we've had, and that there's something that we can do to address that thing specifically. A lot of times we're functioning in the world and we don't know why we're functioning a certain way. But when we gain the awareness, then we can start to do things differently or do things about it. So that awareness is so important. And then beyond the awareness is really sitting and asking yourself, do you feel like you struggle in how you see yourself, how you show up in the world, what you feel about who you are? Do you feel a certain way in how you view the world? Does the world make you feel fearful? And do you feel like you don't step out into the world because of some reason? Maybe you don't know why, but it could be very much so related to childhood experiences. And do you have struggle in relationships? Is it hard to formulate relationships? Or is it hard to keep relationships? Or do you feel like you attract unhealthy relationships? A lot of these things really can be impacted from the experiences we had in childhood, because deep down we function from the beliefs that happened in those experiences. And now there are people who end up displaying the same behaviors that they experienced. So to even ask yourself, do you notice that you do some of the same things of how you experience life? And I say that to say, when we have children, we don't want to pass that on to them. Us stepping forward to start doing our own healing work can really help to prevent us from carrying these behaviors into the generations to come. And then I want to also acknowledge the people who really have like a post-traumatic strength after they've dealt with adversity, where they may, for example, a man whose father wasn't there for them, now they are intent on being there for their children, and they are there for their children because they are making sure that they don't have their children experience what they've experienced. That's an example of that. Doesn't mean that all the work has been done. It's still important to acknowledge how you feel about yourself, how you are in other relationships, just how you're showing up in the world. And I think we all have the ability to exhibit post-traumatic strength, or post-traumatic growth. We all have the ability to get there especially when we start acknowledging the things that have happened and doing the work that will cause us to grow in those areas, to grow through those experiences, and to come out on the other side using all of it for our elevation. So if you have enjoyed this video, please like this video. Also subscribe to this channel. And if there's someone who you feel could benefit from this, please share it with them. I will be posting a video every week on new content in relation to our growth, the experiences that we have through trauma, not to just talk about what we've experienced, but to really start having an awareness and to start navigating how we can grow through those experiences. Okay, I will see you in the next video. Bye.